Father Jean and Father David and Father Michael, I'd like to ask a question. We have a number of friends here today who are working in communications and also in education and evangelization. How in a classroom setting are you guys, or with students, are you guys using AI to enhance the learning experience? Because there's a lot of fear around, well, what is, how are we going to use knowledge? How are we going to test people if, AI is able to, instantaneously generate what seems like very compelling papers or answers?
Well, I usually look out for any emojis that appear in term papers and questions if I would like further examples. But no, I've actually have shifted away from a lot of the written assignments that I would tend to give to my students. I've given more oral exams this past year than I have in my 7 or 8 years of teaching. I also had mentioned in another interview that I'm trying to integrate more group work, and I very much like the idea of the debates. Last semester in a Grace course, I made sure that the students were all taking on different characters and different heresies as well. I think I lost a few sisters to Lutheranism along the way, but it's okay. So that kind of experience of role playing, I think, can be enhanced with AI. I mean, I think you're right that this kind of imaginative, fun, playful interaction with different historic characters or schools of thought can be very valuable and enriching. And I think the more active and involved the students are in these sorts of group projects, debates, disputes, conversations, presentations, the better, because, I mean, traditionally, studies in pedagogy have shown that this more active form of assimilation and communication tends to lead to a much deeper assimilation of the material than a passive listening of a lecture, which is painful as someone who enjoys lecturing and spends a lot of hours preparing his lecture. I just have to acknowledge the facts that the students may actually get a lot more out of my class if I'm more attentive to their needs and I'm really leaning into this technology. The latest document from the church highlighted the fact that teachers are not mere dispensers of information. And that's not just a nice thought. That basically is a reality that all of us have to embrace if we want to keep our jobs, because there are a lot of other systems that can distribute information more rapidly and more extensively than any of us could possibly do so. But we remain mentor figures. And as I go on and start taking on more graduate students, I appreciate more and more the value of mentorship. How much care and attention students need, because as anyone who's done a doctorate or major studies before knows, it's not just about how smart you are. It's about how you organize your life, and there are a whole host of habits and virtues required to persevere through that arduous task. And having a real and wise companion along the way, I think, is indispensable. And what a joy if we can spend more time doing that than repeating the same information over and over again that anyone can pull up on their phone.
So I suppose my experience is slightly different. Sorry, in as much as back home in Malta, I've been tasked by the diocese to kind of look at how we can prepare and arm educators in primary and secondary schooling. So in Malta, the church basically accounts for 1/3 of the teaching of the student population on the whole island. And we are at the moment on the forefront in terms of preparing and arming teachers. So in giving in-house profession development sessions to teachers, as well as the church is now the first institute on the island to launch accredited short courses for teachers who want to integrate AI tools in their education. The whole gist of all of these things, I think, tends towards two things. First of all, kind of like similar to what Father Michael said, is the idea that ultimately the main goal of education, at least in these elementary years, isn't really the imparting of content, but the formation of skills and character. And the general thrust of what we're trying to do in Malta is to kind of tell teachers they have a responsibility to use these tools, but a responsibility to use them in order to help them form these students in terms of the skills they have, in terms of the moral skills they have, the interpersonal skills they have, the critical and academic skills they have. So this involves also a separation between what AI literacy is in terms of AI literacy training and critical skills. Whereas AI literacy might need a bit more in terms of the resources to implement that. Critical thinking is something any teacher can do, and if we're honest, should be doing, right? So this is what we're going for. Also making sure that this remains a tool to be used by educators in order to allow them to have more, face-to-face time with the students, more actually human contact, which is something that kind of we're realizing is a great risk, right? Kind of finding the very quick solution, which would be to have an AI tutor, which might have its merits, but if that is the only way we go, it lead to definitely much bigger problems than solutions. So that's one point, kind of using the tools to alleviate certain administrative tasks in order to have the more proper contact, proper education contact with the students. But the other is also kind of to recognize giving teachers the skills, not really on how to use this app or this other app, but also telling them what are the questions you should ask yourself to decide when and where you should integrate an AI tool or not, right? So will this tool replace certain human skills that the students should learn? If yes, then this should not be introduced there, right? In order for us to form. There was this fantastic study, or worrying study, published this year by a group of researchers by Microsoft, which showed very briefly this kind of correlation between the higher one has confidence in the AI tools they're using, the lower they are engaging the critical skills and critical thinking, right? Whereas the more maybe skeptical or wary one is of a tool, the more they are engaging kind of the critical, thinking and discernment and judgment in these different aspects. And what we would like is to ensure that these students, once they finish the schooling and are out there in the world, are good Catholics and great citizens in society. And this requires that they have this proper holistic formation of these interpersonal, moral, and critical skills.